Commission, select committees, code of conduct, questions to secretaries, request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries, personal explanations, introductions of bills, motions relating to the business or sitting of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary, public business, executive council business, motion.
Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Be it resolved that this House approve the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure respecting all functions of the Tobago House of Assembly for the year October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020, copies of which will lead on the table at an earlier stage of the proceedings. Madam Presiding Officer, Honorable Chief Secretary, Secretaries, Assistant Secretaries, Minority Leader and members of the House of the Assembly, Chief Administrator and other administrators, senior staff of the Tobago House of Assembly, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the public gallery, local and international audiences following this presentation on radio, on television, and on the World Wide Web, members of the media, good morning. In accordance with Section 41(1) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996, it is a distinct honor to be afforded the opportunity to stand before this honorable House to present the draft estimates of the Tobago House of Assembly for fiscal 2020. I'm pleased to inform you that today's submission to this honorable House represents the combined efforts of many individuals and groups within the Tobago House of Assembly and the wider Tobago community. Please permit me at this time to extend my profound gratitude to the Chief Secretary, all secretaries and assistant secretaries, and the staff of the various divisions who tirelessly and selflessly contributed to the development of this presentation. I also wish to extend special commendation to the staff of the Division of Finance and the Economy and the staff of Planning in the Office of the Chief Secretary. My appreciation extends as well to the non-governmental, community-based, and youth organizations, individuals, and the participants in the Tobago House of Assembly's pre-budget survey for 2019, whose numerous suggestions have assisted us in shaping some of the budgetary priorities, which I will present later. I would also like to thank my spouse and family for their dedicated support at all times. Above all, I thank Almighty God for His continued guidance and the tremendous generosity of all who have worked with me as a team to craft today's submission. Madam Presiding Officer, Tobago is at a critical juncture and at a strategic inflection point in its development. Our fiduciary responsibility is to chart a course which would take our development to another level and in the best direction suited to the needs and aspirations of our people. Madam Presiding Officer, what successive administrations of the Assembly have sought to do is to avoid setting policy purely by expediency We understand, of course, that exogenous factors arise to which we must respond. But this response must be the rudder to guide us back on the course that we have charted, or to make a mid-course correction if the changes in the environment are dynamic enough to cause us to recalibrate. We cannot and will not function like a cork in the ocean, buffeted by the prevailing tides and currents. This is why, Madam Presiding Officer, we have in the past developed comprehensive economic development plans, which articulated our challenges and guided us in steering the economy and society of Tobago. Those objectives, encapsulated in the phrase clean, green, safe, and serene, remain valid, even if now we must redefine and refresh the initiatives which will take us there. The Comprehensive Economic Development Plan, CDP 2.0, spanned the period 2013 to 2017. And over the course of the next few months, we will be undertaking a detailed review of the CDP 2.0 to lay the platform for another longer-term plan. Madam Presiding Officer, we are conscious that the global economy is evolving rapidly. We are witnessing the fourth industrial revolution, driven by artificial intelligence, 5G communication technologies, and developments in biotechnology. We are also witnessing emergent concerns about data privacy, access to information, the acceleration of climate change, and the expectations of citizens for involvement in the decisions which affect their lives. Therefore, there's a need for a fundamental rethink and the recalibration of our course as a result of these mega trends. In the interim, however, this administration was not complacent, since we embarked on 3 related initiatives which lay significant parts of the foundation for a development plan that will take us to 2030. The first initiative is a preparation for Tobago's autonomy in the context of the proposed Constitution Amendment Bill, which is now before a joint select committee of Parliament. The second is a Tobago infrastructure investment strategy. These are discussed in detail later on in my presentation. Madam Presiding Officer, the third initiative is the Draft Medium-Term Policy and Planning Framework 2019 to 2023. The Assembly, through the Division of Finance and Economy, has prepared a draft medium-term policy and planning framework, which is intended to focus our efforts related to our development agenda and guide our development expenditure for our budgets over the next few years. The draft medium-term policy and planning framework will be used to engage stakeholders regarding key initiatives we will be pursuing in respect of tourism as a sector which will catalyze development in the economy of Tobago as a whole. It also addresses key development challenges in respect of development control and use of land, transportation, including the air and sea bridges, energy efficiency, and human capital development. The focused development agenda for the medium term is mindful of the limited resources available to the Assembly in a time of national economic stringency. But even in focusing on certain areas, the implementation of the medium-term policy and planning framework will stimulate economic activity and growth throughout the economy of Tobago. And Madam Presiding Officer, we are looking to roll out this program with a sense of urgency. And it is against this backdrop and consistent with our commitment to development planning, that this administration has developed a draft medium-term policy and planning framework to guide the island's development over the next 4 years and to take us to the next level. Accordingly, today's budget presentation is aptly themed Advancing Our Development Agenda. Today's budget presentation is aptly themed Advancing Our Development Agenda. Madam Presiding Officer, today's fiscal package will be presented in a structured manner. I will proceed with a review of the international, regional, and national economic developments. This will be followed by a brief examination of the Assembly's financial and budgetary position over the past year. I will then provide the rationale for budget numbers by reviewing some of our past achievements before presenting our budgetary priorities for the fiscal 2020 budget. This will be followed by the presentation of the budget numbers for fiscal 2020 and the proposed financing mechanism. I will then highlight some ongoing collaborations we are having with the central government and thereafter conclude today's presentation. Madam Presiding Officer, I will begin by framing our review of the performance of the Tobago economy and its near-term outlook in the context of the evolving global economy. If we were to summarize the state of today's global economy in one word, it would be uncertainty. There are multiple factors, economic as well as geopolitical, which have heightened this uncertainty. First, decisions made on the matters of trade by the United States have escalated tensions with China, as well as Mexico, Canada, and Europe, prompting retaliatory actions from these countries. What some have characterized as trade wars have led businesses in key sectors such as automobiles, consumer staples, information technology, and agricultural products to reassess where they are likely to locate their production facilities, how much labor they should employ, and how they should price their goods. Second, the uncertainty engendered by Brexit, which remains unresolved for the past 3 years and looks set to continue until year's end and beyond. In addition, the gains of populist parties in recent national and European parliamentary elections has also left businesses confused as to where to locate their headquarters and what policies will emerge from the European Union over the next several years. Third, tensions and conflicts in Venezuela, which are affecting us directly in Trinidad and Tobago, Iran, North Korea, and Syria, have further exacerbated the already tenuous issue of large-scale migrations caused by civil war and political repression. Madam Presiding Officer, these uncertainties are manifested in the volatility of the major stock market indices over the last year. The decline in bond yields and incipient inversion of the yield curve, as investors are unsure of market direction and are looking for a safe haven while simultaneously seeking to maximize the yields on their portfolios. As a consequence, in April of this year, the International Monetary Fund cut its global growth forecast for 2019 from 3.5% to 3.3%, reducing the growth rate projections for economies in the EU and Japan. As recently as last week, the Federal Reserve in the United States indicated it was open to cutting interest rates, whereas 1 year ago, there were indications that the Fed would be raising rates in 2019. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, the outlook for emerging market economies is now weaker than previously anticipated. However, within the region, the economy of Jamaica is beginning to make tremendous strides as it emerges stronger and more resilient from the strictures of a prolonged IMF program. It has reduced its debt to GDP ratio dramatically. It is promoting investment in several areas. And while growth is still relatively low, the economy is improving and confidence is returning. Similarly, Barbados is now under an IMF program, resulting in the restructuring of its domestic debt and extensive revision of its development agenda, including a radical change to its income tax regime. By contrast, Venezuela descended into chaos due to its internal political impasse, and while its oil production, while the boon of the economy, plummets to dismal lows. Venezuela's more pressing concern is that of the migration of large numbers of its citizens to neighboring countries, including Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, while crude oil prices have recovered from the lows of 2016-17, they have not returned to the levels of the period 2010 to 2015, following the global financial crisis and the Great Recession, when oil prices averaged over the US $100 per barrel. Similarly, the benchmark Henry Hub price for natural gas has fallen below US $3 per MMBTU in 2019. Natural gas prices in Europe have continued to fall, while prices in the Japanese market have also declined, but remain at over US $10 per MMBTU in 2019. Weaker growth in the global economy is likely to mean softer prices for both oil and natural gas, although these prices could spike in the event of geopolitical events, particularly in the Middle East. In Trinidad and Tobago, according to the latest gross domestic product estimates available from the Central Statistical Office, CSO, growth for the first 3 quarters of 2018 was driven primarily by increased production of natural gas. In the first quarter of 2018, output grew by 0.9%, followed by growth of 2.1% in the second quarter and 1.5% in the third quarter. These 3 consecutive quarters of positive growth are an encouraging sign that the national economy is no longer contracting. As indicated by the Minister of Finance and the Economy in his mid-year budget review, the production of natural gas increased in 2018 to an average of 3.63 billion standard cubic feet per day, which represents an 8% increase over the 2017 average of 3.36 billion standard cubic feet per day. Further, gas production continues to increase and is expected to reach an average of 3.8 BCF per day in 2019. Indeed, production is already averaging 3.81 BCF per day in the first quarter of 2019. Oil production, which is now relatively stable, is expected to increase in the next 3 to 4 years based on the exploration and production strategies of the newly established Heritage Petroleum Company and the proposed activities of other local independent producers. Madam Presiding Officer, the rate of inflation remains subdued. Latest figures from the central bank indicate that the country's recorded headline inflation of 1.5%, food price inflation of 1%, and core inflation of 1.6%. These represent some of the lowest inflation rates for Trinidad and Tobago in decades. In respect of the labor market, The data indicate a modest 4.4% unemployment rate as at the fourth quarter of 2017. No data is available for 2018. Madam Presiding Officer, the most recent survey of business establishments conducted by the Division of Finance and Economy for Tobago indicate that Tobago's GDP at constant prices fell from $1.75 billion in 2017 to $1.74 billion in 2018, a marginal decline of 0.3%. The data indicate that the share of general government activity in Tobago's GDP was about 46% in 2018, and the share of finance, insurance, real estate, and business services sector was about 27% in the same year. Madam Presiding Officer, the tourism sector, which comprises hotel and guest houses, and distribution and restaurants, accounted for 13% of Tobago's GDP in 2018. Further, the data show that the share of transport, storage, and communications was about 6% of Tobago's GDP in 2018. Madam Presiding Officer, the most recent labor market data from the CSO suggests that employment in Tobago for the fourth quarter of 2017 was approximately 2.2%, down from the 4% recorded in the comparative period in 2016. The data indicate that in the fourth quarter of 2017, approximately 57% of persons with jobs in Tobago were employed in the state sector, with the private sector employing approximately 43%. Madam Presiding Officer, the latest data on prices available from the central bank suggests that Tobago recorded headline and food price inflation in March 2019 of approximately 2.4% and 1% respectively. For the 12-month period ending March 2018, Tobago's headline and food price inflation rates averaged 1.6% and 2.4% respectively. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me to examine some recent financial and budgetary developments as it relates to the Tobago House of Assembly. In the financial year ended 30th September 2018, the Assembly received a total of $2,058,304,245 from the central government. The sum of $1,722,621,245 was received for recurrent expenditure, and $335,683,000 was received for development program expenditure. The sum of $204,725,247 was collected as tax and non-tax revenue in Tobago on behalf of the Consolidated Fund and used to offset the total appropriation, bringing the total parliamentary appropriation in fiscal 2018 to $2,263,029,492. For fiscal 2018, recurrent and development program expenditure by the Assembly amounted to $2,039,049,724. Of this sum, recurrent expenditure amounted to $1,698,425,811, while development program expenditure amounted to $340,625,913. Madam Presiding Officer, at the end of fiscal 2017, unspent balances amounting to $81,101,756 were transferred to the contingencies account and used in fiscal 2018 to finance capital expenditure and urgent projects and programs in keeping with our mandate to improve the standard of living of all Tobagonians. Some of the major projects and programs undertaken include the construction of the Rockford Administrative Complex, $24.8 million, the Unemployment Relief Program, URP, $17.7 million, the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, CPEP, $14.7 million, the Schools Expansion Program, $3.9 million, and our Human Capital Development Program, $1.92 million. Madam Presiding Officer, for fiscal 2019, the total budgetary allocation to the Tobago House of Assembly amounted to $2.21 billion. Disaggregated, $1.9 billion was allocated for recurrent expenditure and $231.6 million was allocated for development program expenditure. Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago House of Assembly received a standalone credit rating from the Moody's rating agency. Our rating is currently Ba1 stable, the same level as the sovereign. The Assembly's rating is reviewed annually, and this exercise will continue during the next fiscal year, and together with the annual IMF Article 4 consultation, will form part of the Tobago House of Assembly's annual review process by international agencies. Madam Presiding Officer, you may recall my commitment early in my term of office to modernize the Assembly's accounting framework and financial architecture. At this time, I am pleased to update this Honorable House on our advances. The first step commenced with the introduction of the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, or IPSAS, for the preparation, presentation, and reporting of the financial affairs of the Assembly. It was decided that this adoption would be done on a phased basis, commencing with the IPSAS cash basis and systematically transitioning to the IPSAS accrual basis. The adoption of IPSAS will not only facilitate the implementation of an integrated financial management information system, or IFMIS, but it will also improve the management and financial reporting framework of the Assembly, allow for informed assessment and decision-making in relation to resource allocation, and provide for greater accountability and transparency. It must also be noted that the Assembly is currently preparing and presenting its financial statements in accordance with the IPSAS cash basis. Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Finance and the Economy continues to advance the use of the Automated Clearinghouse, or the ACH, and all divisions have since adopted the ACH system for payroll processing. The next iteration will focus on facilitating payments to suppliers throughout the Assembly using this system in 3 phases. Phase 1 will include payments to utility companies. Phase 2 will formalize payments for contractual obligations such as security, janitorial, and other services. And Phase 3 will initiate payments to suppliers engaged via purchase orders. In fact, Madam Presiding Officer, Phase 1 of this process is already in train, with Phase 2 scheduled to commence in the first quarter of fiscal 2020 and Phase 3 in the second quarter of fiscal 2020. Madam Presiding Officer, in my budget statement for 2019, I also indicated that the Assembly will participate in a pilot program in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank and the Ministry of Finance and Economy to modernize the national accounting system through the adoption of a new public financial management framework and an integrated financial information system, or IFMIS. These initiatives will result in a significant improvement in efficiency by allowing for real-time access and reporting on the Assembly's financial and accounting operations, which will improve the budgeting, planning, and decision-making process. Madam Presiding Officer, Free Balance, a Canadian company, was selected as the preferred vendor for the national implementation of IFMIS. The existing business processes of the Assembly for budget preparation, payment management, and revenue management were reviewed, and the process flows mapped, and further assessment will be undertaken to enhance efficiency. The IFMIS is scheduled to be fully operational in the second quarter of fiscal 2020, with the conclusion of the pilot exercise in the third quarter of fiscal 2020. The Assembly's budget estimates for fiscal 2021 will be prepared and printed using the IFMIS, with a full rollout to be completed in fiscal 2022. Madam Presiding Officer, please allow me to address the issue of the Assembly's financial statements. On January 24, 2019, the Tobago House of Assembly fulfilled its responsibility as outlined in Section 45 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996, as per the preparation and tabling of the Assembly's financial statement for the 2018 financial year. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, Section 46 of the Act states that the Assembly's accounts are public accounts and are to be audited by the Auditor General's Department. In this regard, we continue to work diligently with the Auditor General's Department to ensure that all unaudited reports are brought up to date. We intend to meet with the new Auditor General and her team early in July to bring resolution to this issue. Madam Presiding Officer, please allow me at this time to provide an update of our past development initiatives and to detail our fiscal priorities for 2020. Madam Presiding Officer, the budget estimates which I will present later on were largely influenced by the draft medium-term policy and planning framework, the Tobago House of Assembly's pre-budget survey, the contributions of various stakeholders in the pre-budget consultation meetings for 2019, and the budgetary submissions from the divisions of the Assembly. These submissions have assisted us in setting an agenda to propel this island's development. And that is why the budget for fiscal 2020 is appropriately themed, Advancing Our Development Agenda. This year's budget focuses on the following areas: accelerating economic growth and promoting diversification, creating jobs and enhancing productivity, fostering innovation and creativity, education and human capital development, tourism sector development, expanding food production, development of the cooperative sector, improving healthcare and wellness, housing opportunities, the holistic development of young people, infrastructure and infrastructure strategy, environmental sustainability, crime and safety, and community empowerment. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now elaborate on each of these thematic areas in turn, starting with accelerating economic growth and promoting diversification. Madam Presiding Officer, one of the most important developmental aspirations of this administration is to stimulate economic growth and diversification of the Tobago economy. We hold the view that it is only through sustainable economic growth and diversification that we can develop the economic resilience to improve our overall standard of living over the long term. As such, our growth and diversification strategy is closely linked to our work at the Business Development Unit, or BDU, now under the purview of the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor, our work at the Strategic Business Support and Development Unit, the Eco-Industrial Development Company of Tobago, EIDCOT, and the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited at the Division of Finance and the Economy, and our partnership with the private sector in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, in the last year, the Business Development Unit provided loans and grants totaling approximately $2.4 million to 42 entrepreneurs to establish and expand their businesses. We can proudly state that since the inception of both the Enterprise Assistance Fund and the Enterprise Assistance Grant Program, Tobago's businesses have received approximately $48 million in financial assistance, along with technical support to improve their operations. In addition, the BDU continues to stimulate entrepreneurship at the community level through its Road Market initiative across the island. This Road Market initiative provides opportunities for 160 entrepreneurs to showcase their products and services over the last 12 months. In the next fiscal year, the BDU will continue to support our diversification thrust through enhanced enterprise assistance loan and enterprise assistance grant programs. The BDU will also continue to provide opportunities for Tobago entrepreneurs to showcase their products by hosting several community caravans. Additionally, building on the success of the recent Tobago Goes to Trinidad Business Expo, the BDU intends to host several similar initiatives in the upcoming fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, also critical to our growth and diversification strategy is our work at the Strategic Business Support and Development Unit in the Division of Finance and the Economy. Last year, 20 Tobago entrepreneurs were exposed to training in the fundamentals of exporting as part of a broader series of capacity enhancement and training initiatives. Additionally, in preparation for Tobago's participation in the Trade and Investment Convention 2019, 23 entrepreneurs attended a series of training sessions which included cost and pricing strategies and effective communication skills. Moreover, Madam Presiding Officer, ongoing collaboration with Fashion TT affords Tobago's designers access to capacity enhancement programs and initiatives such as the Value Chain Investment Program and the Business of Fashion workshops. Also, Madam Presiding Officer, ongoing collaboration with Export TT resulted in the establishment of the Tobago Export Readiness Program with an initial cohort of 13 Tobago entrepreneurs receiving specialized training in developing an export plan. Madam Presiding Officer, just last week, Tobago entrepreneurs formally engaged the Cuban market through their attendance at the Expo Caribe Trade Show in Santiago, Cuba, facilitated by the Ministry of Trade and Export TT. This included one-on-one meetings with potential importers and distributors, as well as with the Chamber of Commerce of Cuba. These engagements will allow for greater market exposure as the Assembly continues to support Tobago's businesses to penetrate export markets. In the next fiscal year, the Strategic Business Support and Development Unit will continue its work by forging strategic partnerships with external stakeholders, including chambers of commerce, manufacturers associations, supermarket associations, universities, and embassies for greater market penetration of Tobago's products in selected markets. The unit will also collaborate with Fashion TT, Export TT, and Creative TT to enable greater capacity enhancement training for Tobago entrepreneurs. Madam Presiding Officer, the Eco-Industrial Development Company of Tobago, EIDCOT, also has a significant role to play in the overall growth and diversification thrust of this administration. Over the last year, EIDCOT attracted 30 new applicants for leased land and built spaces. 7 applicants were approved and are in the process of being onboarded. These tenants are primarily in the areas of light manufacturing and agro-processing and are expected to generate approximately 150 new private sector jobs. Over the next fiscal year, several initiatives are proposed by EIDCOT as part of the overall diversification strategy. These include the establishment of a food testing lab at Cove in collaboration with the Caribbean Agriculture Research and Development Institute, CARDI, and the Caribbean Industrial Research Institute, CARIRI, to provide avenues for local producers to test the quality of food and to receive certification for domestic and export markets. The establishment of a business incubator and shared business space to provide a nurturing environment for entrepreneurs and enterprises in the early stages of their development and to act as a focal point for innovation in business development, and the establishment of an animation studio at Cove to assist in jump-starting an animation industry in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, the final entity I want to talk about with respect to our strategy for growth and diversification is the Venture Capital Program. Madam Presiding Officer, the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited continues to persevere with the mandate of diversifying the Tobago economy and reigniting the entrepreneurial spirit of the Tobago people. The fund currently has $3.42 million in assets under management and continues to work alongside potential investees to expand the company's portfolio. In fiscal 2019, the fund received 7 proposals for investment totaling approximately $31 million. The primary sectors were clean and light manufacturing, agriculture and agro-processing, niche tourism, clean renewable energy and green technology, and information communication technology. Madam Presiding Officer, the Board of Directors of the fund were mandated to undertake a review of the Venture Capital Program in order to expand the funding support to targeted and emerging sectors that are in alignment with the Assembly's draft medium-term policy and planning framework via equity and loan financing. The fund is of the view that there are significant benefits to be gained from deeper synergies and partnerships with the private sector and budding entrepreneurs as we seek to establish an ecosystem conducive to venture capital development in Tobago. Development of this ecosystem involves the training of fund managers, investors, and lawyers on the principles of private equity and venture capital investments, and preparing potential investees to be able to qualify for investment. This approach augurs well in making entrepreneurs, businesses, and investors more receptive to equity financing, along with its requisite risk appetite and ownership sharing tenets. Of equal importance is the development of an incubator system within educational institutions so that young, talented entrepreneurs are encouraged and mentored. Madam Presiding Officer, as an administration, we are proud of our achievements and initiatives over the past 18 years to advance the expansion and support of Tobago's private sector. The aforementioned units and companies tasked with enterprise development have been mandated to review and reorient their programs in accordance with our new development agenda to facilitate greater development funding support for startups, business expansions, retooling, renovation, and product development. This realignment will provide greater support to the wider private sector, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and stakeholder organizations, including the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Tobago Agricultural Society, the Tobago Apicultural Society, the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, and the Tobago Unique Bed and Breakfast and Self-Catering Association. Madam Presiding Officer, let me now turn to job creation and productivity enhancement. Madam Presiding Officer, the most recent labor market data on Tobago from the CSO suggests that approximately 57% of the Tobago labor force is employed in the state sector, with the private sector employing 43%. By contrast, at the national level, about 25% of the labor force is employed by the state, with the private sector employing about 75%. Madam Presiding Officer, the distribution of employment between the state and private sector in Tobago is less than optimal, and this is something that we will continue to address over the medium to long term as we seek to create more sustainable and high-paying jobs in the private sector. This will only happen if the private sector on the island can develop and expand to such an extent that they can scale up their existing operations and penetrate new export markets. Madam Presiding Officer, one of the strategies we propose to employ is the use of a job vacancy survey that will detail the jobs required by the private sector now and in the future. This would assist in making the matching process easier and foster greater alignment between the skills required by the private sector and the skills that are available in our labor force. The information emanating from this survey will inform the priority areas for tertiary level funding from the Assembly's Department of Advanced Training and Advisory Services data. Further, to assist in this recruitment process, we will continue to make the services of the Employment Exchange Bureau available to the private sector in Tobago free of charge. Madam Presiding Officer, over the medium to long term, we remain committed to ensuring a significant shift in the distribution of jobs between the private sector and the state sector. But Madam Presiding Officer, even as we treat with our employment issues, it is of vital importance that we continue to address the problems of productivity both in the public and private sectors. Earlier this year, We debated and discussed initiatives and cogent solutions to the productivity challenges confronting this island. Two major initiatives to address these challenges are the establishment of the Tobago Productivity Council and the Public Service Academy. Our productivity challenge is one which we must confront with urgency, and an Executive Council note has been prepared for the review of the Executive Council. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now turn to our strategy for innovation and creativity. Madam Presiding Officer, also central to our approach for stimulating economic growth in Tobago is our strategy to establish Tobago as an intelligent island. You will recall in my past budget statements, I highlighted the need for Tobago to utilize information communication technology as an enabler of socioeconomic development, drawing strong parallels from the Singapore and Estonia models. Our stated intention then and now is to transform Tobago into an intelligent island. Last year, at the annual Tobago Economic and Business Outlook Conference hosted by the Division of Finance and the Economy, this issue was addressed with particular emphasis on ICT integration and infrastructure. In his keynote address, the Chief Executive Officer of TSTT highlighted the integral role of ICT in the economic growth and development of the island and the nation as a whole. Indeed, as an administration, we recognize the importance of ICT innovation and creativity, and therefore we will continue to advance towards establishing Tobago as an intelligent island. In this regard, several initiatives are outlined within the draft medium-term policy and planning framework, which is in alignment with the National ICT Plan and sets out specific strategies geared towards improving ICT in Tobago. These strategies include enhancing ICT infrastructure across the island through the implementation of high-speed broadband connectivity, which would provide a platform to enhance access and connectivity, developing and installing digital infrastructure which would improve connectivity and collaboration across the Assembly and between the Assembly and central government, standardization of digital tools and services across the Assembly for all events, products, services, and programs. And it would also greatly improve the impact and reach of the Assembly's online presence. We will be also providing incentives for international ICT professionals to share their expertise with their local counterparts to enhance the quality of our ICT products and services, as well as to provide additional professional services and expertise to develop our own ICT infrastructure, and empowering our young adults by providing capacity building activities with specific focus on coding, user interface, and user experience design and animation. Madam Presiding Officer, also central to Tobago's diversification strategy is our investment in the construction of a Tier 3 data center in collaboration with TSTT. A request for proposal was issued earlier this year, and submissions are currently being reviewed. Madam Presiding Officer, this project is integral to the Assembly's overall Intelligent Island mandate, which I alluded to earlier. Madam Presiding Officer, another essential component of our innovation strategy relates to the work of the Tobago Information Technology Limited, or TITL. A key initiative undertaken by TITL over the past year to foster innovation and creativity was the introduction of the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics After School program targeting students at both secondary and primary levels and exposing them to a number of activities in the field of geographic information systems, programming and coding, robotics, and the application of drones. This initiative fosters and shapes persons from an early age to become future innovators and inventors. Thus far, just over 100 students have benefited from this initiative. In the next fiscal year, TITL will also offer tertiary level training in ICT. In this regard, TITL is in discussions with key educational institutions in Trinidad with a view towards exploring physical, technological, or hybrid modes of course delivery to Tobago students through the Tobago Innovation Center. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me now to look at our strategy for education and human capital development. Madam Presiding Officer, one of the main pillars in the development of any society is the strength and success of its own education system. Over the last year, the Division of Education, Innovation, and Energy has spearheaded a number of initiatives geared towards improving the delivery of quality education from early childhood care education to the tertiary level. At the ECCE levels, Madam Presiding Officer, there has been ongoing discussions with numerous stakeholders in preparation for the construction of 5 ECCE centers earmarked for Corland, Plymouth, Belgarden, Roxborough, and Bon Accord. This project is expected to provide early education to approximately 200 3- to 5-year-olds across the island. Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Education has also increased its focus on special education. Additional staff was appointed to the School for the Deaf, Speech, and Language Impaired, and as well as the Happy Haven School, to aid in the delivery of quality education to our differently able students. Additionally, the division also constructed calming rooms for our differently able students during the past year. In the upcoming fiscal year, construction of the School of the Deaf, Speech, Language, Madam Presiding Officer. In the upcoming fiscal year, construction of the School for the Deaf, Speech, and Language Impaired will commence at Signal Hill. Madam Presiding Officer, emphasis was also placed on human resource development and capacity building at the primary and secondary levels to cultivate a culture of more effective and efficient management and administration of our schools. In this regard, school leadership and financial management training programs were conducted for school administrators. Also, curriculum planning, development, and continuous training workshops were conducted in various subject areas for both primary and secondary educators. Additionally, the Professional Development Center, established in 2018 at Madden House, John Dial, has provided numerous training opportunities for curriculum officers, principals, and teachers to improve teaching and learning as well as student performance. Madam Presiding Officer, with regard to the school feeding program, we are currently offering breakfasts to approximately 2,500 primary school students and lunch to 13,000 early childhood, primary, and secondary school students throughout Tobago. In the last year, we have placed greater emphasis on providing local content through enhanced and standardized recipes. And in the upcoming year, we'll continue to train our food service providers in the areas of food safety and food preparation. Madam Presiding Officer, in January 2019, the Division of Education established the Learning Enrichment Center at Hope. This center provides academic refinement and psychological support to students who are on suspension by providing one-on-one interaction through student-centered programs geared to minimize and eradicate further disruptive behaviors and reduce the exposure to potential negative influences when students are on suspension from school. At the Learning Enrichment Center, students can participate in individual and group counseling, skill-building sessions, remediation, and other interventions tailored to their specific needs. Madam Presiding Officer, we continue to ensure the comfort and well-being of our staff and students to facilitate student learning. Within the last year, the Division of Education conducted repairs to 33 primary schools and 9 secondary schools and completed expansion works to 4 primary schools across Tobago. Additionally, proposals are currently under review for the relocation of the Scarborough Secondary School. Madam Presiding Officer, in my last budget statement, I indicated our intent to implement a construction certification training program. The program was established at the Roxborough Trade Center and at the Metal Industries Company Institute of Technology, MICIT, at Canaan. 27 students were assessed and graduated from Roxborough in January 29, while 29 students successfully completed their assessment and will graduate from the program in June. Madam Presiding Officer, as well, the Division of Education, Innovation, and Energy is collaborating with the Tobago College and University Consortium in an effort to advance the establishment of the University of Tobago. The division has also established the Tobago Higher Education Council, which is expected to manage the delivery of tertiary education programs offered by various institutions in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn to the tourism sector development. Madam Presiding Officer, notwithstanding the ongoing plans of the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited, in collaboration with key tourism stakeholders on the island, we continue to implement a number of initiatives to enhance Tobago's tourism product and to market our island as a premier tourism destination. In the last fiscal year, the initiatives to enhance our tourism product and the marketing of Tobago included the rebranding of Destination Tobago as Tobago Beyond Ordinary. A local launch was held in October 2018, with subsequent international launches occurring at the World Travel Market, WTM, in November 2018, the International Tourism Bourse, ITB Berlin, in March 2019, and in Canada in May 2019. Additionally, the participation in several regional and international trade shows and conferences to market Tobago in Europe, the United States, and the Caribbean. The administration of the Tourism Accommodation Upgrade Program, which will provide a reimbursement grant for approved upgrade works, the launch of a community tourism awareness campaign, and the establishment of tourism youth clubs in 7 of the 9 secondary schools on the island, the hosting of several familiarization tours for travel agents, airline partners, and product managers, and the successful negotiation of airlift through Sunwing Airlines out of Canada in December 2018. Madam Presiding Officer, Arising out of these initiatives, we are beginning to see some encouraging signs in terms of increased arrivals to Tobago. For the period January to May 2019, international air arrivals increased by 2,054, a 17% increase relative to the comparative period in 2018. But, Madam Presiding Officer, notwithstanding these positive signs, we continue to encounter significant challenges, particularly in the lack of high-quality rooms and insufficient investment in our tourism sector due to our fiscal constraints. Regrettably, we lost a valuable opportunity to simultaneously address these persistent problems plaguing our tourism sector with the loss of the Sandals investment. We allowed petty partisan politics to stymie Tobago's development. However, Madam Presiding Officer, we continue to work diligently towards the development of the tourism sector in Tobago, and I wish to highlight some of the initiatives aimed at developing the sector over the next fiscal year. They are the establishment of a Tobago Tourism Council chaired by the Honorable Chief Secretary, which will provide a platform for tourism industry stakeholders to discuss opportunities and to address the challenges facing the industry. The provision of training to improve service excellence across the industry, the continued participation in several national, regional, and international trade shows and conferences, inclusive of the CTO UK Roadshow, the Birmingham Dive Show, WTM in London, Caribbean Week in Canada, and the ITB in Berlin. The restoration and upgrade to several heritage sites and attractions, inclusive of the Roxborough Cocoa House and the historical sites at the Cove Eco-Industrial Estate, the continued hosting of several festivals and events, inclusive of the Dragon Boat Festival, the Blue Food Festival, and the Tobago Jazz Experience, the provision of additional direct international airlift to Tobago, the implementation of free Wi-Fi at strategic sites and attractions across the island, and the creation of destination apps to enhance visitor experience by showcasing key sites, attractions, and events. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn to a program of activities to expand food production in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, one of the critical developmental priorities of this administration is to enhance the food security in Tobago, thereby increasing the contribution of the agricultural sector to the island's GDP. In this regard, the Division of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries continues to undertake a number of initiatives to boost agricultural production on the island. For instance, through the Plant Tissue Culture Laboratory, approximately 35,000 in vitro plants were produced and made available to farmers. In addition, through the Home Garden Initiative, we continue to encourage the general population in Tobago to get involved in agriculture. At the end of last year, approximately 1,700 persons were registered in the Home Garden Initiative, with their progress continually monitored by staff at the division. The division's Agricultural Access Road program has served to improve access to arable lands at a cost of $45 million, allowing farmers on the island to scale up their production. Among the 35 agricultural access roads completed over the last year are Jigger Hill, Indian Walk and Farmers Road in Mason Hall, Observatory in Speyside, Flagstaff Hill in Charlottesville, and Windsor Road, Caledonia, Farm Road, and Terry Hill Road in Mount St. George. Additionally, farmers in Tobago are exposed to approximately 25 workshops covering a wide range of areas related to management and husbandry. In its thrust to support livestock production in Tobago, the division, in collaboration with the Tobago Cold Storage and Warehouse Facility, TICOSWAF, provided animal feed to farmers and to reduce costs and assisted in sourcing markets for their products. Over the next fiscal year, among the programs and initiatives to be undertaken by the division to expand agricultural production in Tobago are the following. The continuation of the Agricultural Access Road Program, the reopening of the Scarborough Market, the continuation of the Eat Local campaign, the completion of the Goldboro Agricultural Irrigation Project, the establishment of a community business facility for the processing of local fruits, the continuation of the Home Garden Initiative and the Agriculture at Schools program, the provision of capacity enhancement training for farmers and prospective farmers, and the continuation of support for the activities of the Tobago Agricultural Society and the Tobago Apicultural Society. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me at this time to turn to our work with respect to the development of the cooperative sector in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, the cooperative sector continues to play a critical role in Tobago's overall economic development. There are currently 26 active credit unions and 9 non-financial cooperatives operating in Tobago with a net asset base of approximately $440 million. Recent GDP data on Tobago suggests that the financial sector on the island contributes approximately 27% to our GDP. The cooperative sector makes substantial contributions in the areas of financial services, the provision of housing and land acquisition, agro-processing, and fishing. Madam Presiding Officer, over the next fiscal year, we propose to undertake several initiatives to strengthen the cooperative sector in Tobago, including the continuation of the Junior Cooperative Incentive Program, the development of a cooperative statistical database to facilitate evidence-based policy making, and the hosting of a series of capacity enhancement training programs to improve governance and enable cooperatives to better meet their statutory obligations and conform to recent international financial regulations. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me at this time to turn to health and wellness. Madam Presiding Officer, our health status has significant implications for overall standard of living and quality of life as a society. Goal number 3 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal is the right to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all. As such, the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development continues to advance a number of strategies to ensure the delivery of quality health care in Tobago. Some of the initiatives implemented in the last fiscal year are the commissioning of the Women's Health Service, the Pink Room, and the Breast Health Clinic, which is an initiative to treat with women's health issues, the commissioning of levels 4 and 5 triage areas at the Scarborough General Hospital to reduce the waiting times at the Accident and Emergency Department, the introduction of free arteriovenous fistula surgeries for 39 renal failure patients, and the requisite staff training in collaboration with the Bridge of Life NGO, the establishment of the Regional Office and Assessment Center of the Children's Authority in Tobago in collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister, the re-establishment of the Tobago Coordinating Committee for Persons with Disabilities in collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister, and the hosting of the public education sessions on conflict resolution, gender-based issues, domestic violence, drug prevention, and disaster preparedness. Madam Presiding Officer, this is just a brief overview of some of the key achievements in the area of health and wellness over the last year. Madam Presiding Officer, in the next fiscal year, as we continue to work towards improving the general level of health and well-being of our residents, we propose to undertake the following. The completion of the Moriah Health Center by April 2020 at a cost of approximately $28 million. The construction of the Roxborough Hospital at a cost of approximately $60 million, earmarked for completion by the last quarter of 2020. The expansion of research in areas inclusive of aging, cancer, management of non-communicable diseases, mental health, and biomedical waste management. The division's continued partnership with the Family Planning Association of Trinidad and Tobago for the provision of sexual and reproductive health services, the training of staff, and the provision of family planning counseling services. The formalization of the relationship between the division and the Trinbago Progressive Association out of New York to support medical missions, donations of equipment, and health education activities throughout Tobago. The provision of a range of activities for over 8,000 elderly persons in collaboration with the Tobago Association of the Elderly TATE. The increase in support for the differently abled population, inclusive of training for caregivers and parents through partnership with the Tobago Coordinating Committee for the differently abled. Additionally, the provision of adequate care for at-risk children, inclusive of social workers and a community residence for children in collaboration with the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, and the improvement of renal disease care in Tobago in collaboration with the Washington School of Medicine. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now turn my attention to housing. Madam Presiding Officer, housing is a basic human need and is a crucial determinant of the quality of life of citizens in Tobago. Home ownership requires a great deal of financial resources, which many Tobagonians may find difficult to source for the construction of a new home. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 11 calls for the provision of housing as an essential element of sustainable development, as it fosters a higher standard of living for all in any society. From this perspective, government has a critical role to play in providing adequate, safe, and affordable housing, and as an administration, we are therefore cognizant of this, and as we continue to work towards improving and expanding the housing stock on the island, we have implemented several initiatives over the past year. Many Tobagonians would have benefited from our programs geared towards home ownership, as well as the improvements to the housing stock on the island. In the last fiscal year, approximately 384 grants totaling $2.9 million were distributed under the Home Improvement Grant Program, while approximately 70 Tobagonians received financial assistance totaling just under $1 million under the Home Completion Program. Additionally, Under the Home Improvement Subsidy Program, approximately 48 Tobagonians received assistance to the tune of $0.4 million, and a further 143 Tobagonians received assistance under the beneficiary-owned land program, totaling $3.2 million. Madam Presiding Officer, as the division continues to address the mismatch between the demand for and the supply of public housing, major projects are proposed in the Riseland and Adelphi developments. These projects are expected to add approximately 154 units to the housing stock on the island. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me to turn to a program of activities for young people. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration remains committed to the holistic development of young Tobagonians. Not only do we support, encourage, and reward their academic advancement, but we continue to assist our young people in their pursuit of excellence in areas of sport and culture. We also provide training opportunities to improve their employability and to empower them to pursue entrepreneurial activities. Our underlying philosophy is that you cannot have sustainable development, which by definition is development that meets the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs, unless young people are at the focal point of this development. It is against this backdrop that we continue to invest in the holistic development of our young people in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I am indeed heartened to see that some of our investments in our young people are already bearing fruit in the fields of sport, art, and culture. In fact, several of our young people continue to excel at the national, regional, and international levels, particularly in the field of sport. Please permit me to highlight some of these achievements of which all of us as Tobagonians should be justifiably proud. Madam Presiding Officer, at this year's Carifta Games, Mr. Tyreek Hosford won his 5th Carifta Games gold medal in the men's under-20 javelin. Ms. Sophia John also won gold in the women's open heptathlon. And at the 2019 Special Olympics International World Games, Ms. Sophia Jackson won both gold and silver medals in the softball throw and the track and field 100 meters walk, respectively. Ms. Anicia Baptiste was also a selectee on the national netball team for the upcoming Netball World Cup in England. In the field of culture, 2 of our young Tobago Steel Panel Rangers, Mr. Kirsch Ramsey and Mr. O.J. Richards, both of whom are pursuing a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, excelled on the national stage at this year's Panorama competition. Madam Presiding Officer, this is just a snapshot of some of the recent achievements of our young people in Tobago. This goes to show that once our young people continue to strive for excellence, the sky is the limit. We, however, retain the responsibility to provide financial, technical, and infrastructural support for them to achieve their full potential. Over the next fiscal year, we will continue to support and celebrate youth excellence through a number of programs, not only at the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs, but across all divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. The programs and initiatives earmarked for young people over the next year include the hosting of the World of Work program to improve employability and to aid in personal development, the hosting of the Sport Award and the Tobago Youth Award, Awards, where we continue to recognize and reward youth excellence in a range of areas. The completion of the Goodwood Pavilion at a cost of approximately $6.75 million. The completion of the WIM Skills Development Center at a cost of $9.7 million with a delivery date in November 2019, and upgrades to several of our recreational grounds, inclusive of Hope, Speyside, Roxborough, Shaw Park, and Plymouth. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, we intend to host the Youth Entrepreneurship Program, career fairs, life skills, professional development, and our summer internship programs under the Youth Energize for Success YES program in the Division of Finance and the Economy. Additionally, we will continue the hosting of our financial literacy quiz, the Youth Biz Summer Camp, the Financial Literacy Business Stores, and a Youth Financial Literacy Exposition to sensitize our young people about financial literacy and entrepreneurial issues. And lastly, the hosting of the Tobago Youth Empowerment Forum by the Division of Finance and the Economy to expose our young people to cutting-edge ideas in the field of business. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me now to examine our infrastructure development strategy. Madam Presiding Officer, Tobago has significant infrastructure development needs. This administration is of the considered view that given existing fiscal constraints, in order to develop our infrastructure in Tobago in any sustainable manner, it is important that we adopt a strategic approach to this development. As such, the Executive Council approved the establishment of the Tobago Infrastructure Investment Strategy and appointed a multi-sectoral committee in the Division of Finance and the Economy, representing private sector, civil society, and a cross-section of decision makers who are able to capitalize on opportunities for linkages between divisions, departments, and agencies. The commissioning of a long-term strategy, as well as an associated medium-term priority investment package, is essential to achieving our development goals. Not only does this foster a more transparent and integrated approach to infrastructure planning and investment, but it also establishes best practices for independent assessment, which maximizes value to the taxpayer by more efficiently managing issues such as the availability and cost of project financing, maintenance capacity, judicious planning, and sustainability. Moreover, the development of a capital investment strategy that defines Tobago's investment priorities also establishes a comprehensive and viable project pipeline which can serve as a single point of reference for potential investors and partners. However, Madam Presiding Officer, even as we take a long-term view to develop our infrastructure, we recognize that there are some projects that need to take place immediately. As such, over the last 12 months, we invested significantly in the development of our infrastructure in Tobago. Among our major initiatives were the following: ongoing works on the Thompson River Bridge, which includes the creation of a bypass road and the installation of a temporary Bailey Bridge, road refurbishment and resurfacing of the Claude Noel Highway between Orange Hill and Rockley Vale, between the Orange Hill and Rockley Vale intersection at a cost of $30 million, upgrade works to secondary roads to the tune of $35 million, inclusive of Riseland Trace, Thompson Trace, and Allfields, construction of 2 retaining walls at Mount St. George, completion of the Milford Road bypass to Smithfield Road to provide improved access to the new Scarborough RC School, and the construction of the new Roxborough Administrative Course, the new Roxborough Administrative Complex at a cost of over $60 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Infrastructure has identified a number of projects designed to enhance the quality of life for Tobagonians. These include the rehabilitation of the Claude Noel Highway between Rockley Vale and the Bacalet intersection, coastal rehabilitation work inclusive of the construction of sea defense walls at Grange and Pigeon Point, and the Milford Road Coastal Rehabilitation Project, the construction of special drainage and irrigation work at Hampden Lowlands, the reconstruction of 2 bridges on the Northside connector Rockley Vale Road and Craig Hall to accommodate 2-lane vehicular traffic, the upgrade and realignment of sections of the Windward Road, including the Turpin Bend at Charlottesville, and the major refurbishment to jetties inclusive of Plymouth, Parle-Touvier, and Little Tobago at a cost of $38 million. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now examine the issue of environmental sustainability. Madam Presiding Officer, there is no doubt that the quality of our natural environment has significant implications for our overall standard of living and quality of life. The environment touches all sectors of the island. For example, poor management of coral reefs and seawater quality due to sewage runoff affects fisheries, hampers agriculture, and poses health risks to seabathers while increasing coral reef erosion. Poor coastal zone development leads to coastal erosion and damage to public and private property. This administration is therefore committed to ensuring that any development taking place on the island will not unduly affect the environment. We are committed to developing Tobago in a manner that is environmentally sustainable and climate neutral. It is in this context that the Assembly continues to embark on a number of strategies and initiatives aimed at protecting our pristine natural resources. These include the implementation of coastal protection programs at Fort Granby and Lambeau, the introduction of both salt and freshwater quality testing to inform intervention, the completion of a pilot study on air quality and traffic pollution in Scarborough and Bonaccord and Crom Point, the installation of camera traps at dumping hotspots to deter illegal dumping and improve detection rates, and the establishment of a wetland system inventory and monitoring program to collect baseline data to inform restoration activities. Madam Presiding Officer, over the next fiscal year, as part of its ongoing quest to protect and preserve Tobago's pristine natural environment, among the initiatives to be implemented by the Environment Department are the acquisition of additional equipment to allow for more accurate and reliable water quality testing and air quality monitoring, the establishment of a comprehensive recycling initiative in Tobago that will target in the initial phase plastic bottles, aluminum cans, glass bottles, and paper, the phasing out of the use of polyurethane garbage bags, and the introduction of biodegradable garbage bags, and the collaboration with the private sector on the phasing out of single-use plastic bags. Madam Presiding Officer, I shall now examine the issue of crime and safety. Madam Presiding Officer, there is no doubt that crime has major implications for development, as it can discourage foreign direct investments and stifle our island's economic growth. Therefore, our administration continues to treat seriously with the issue of public safety for all Tobago residents and visitors. Madam Presiding Officer, although there has been an increase in minor crimes, there has been a 22% reduction in serious crimes over the past year. And although Tobago is relatively safe, quite recently, there have been isolated incidents of criminality against citizens and visitors. We must therefore adopt a zero-tolerance approach towards crime. As an island, we must recognize that crime has the potential to negatively impact the long-term viability of our tourism product. And as law-abiding citizens, each of us has a responsibility to work to keep our island safe. We must adopt an all-hands-on-deck approach to fighting this menace of crime. Madam Presiding Officer, in its continuing efforts to keep this island, safe, this administration has been engaged in meaningful collaborations with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and other stakeholders. The Assembly, in partnership with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Tobago Division, established the Tourism-Oriented Policing Unit. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly is also collaborating with the Police Service on the installation of additional CCTV cameras across Tobago. We agree that technology can play a vital role in building and developing the security on the island. In fact, many policing agencies worldwide have implemented numerous technological solutions to improve operational efficiency and outcomes while combating crime. This technological approach can impact tremendously on our efforts to improve safety and security in Tobago. Together, we must ensure that our efforts have one outcome, that is, to ensure that Tobago remains safe, in addition to being clean, green, and serene. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now examine the issue of community empowerment. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration holds the view that there can be no genuine and sustainable development unless our communities play an integral part. Among our initiatives to strengthen and empower communities in Tobago over the last year are the following. 1, the completion of a new multi-purpose facility at Bell Garden. 2, the completion of upgrade works to several multi-purpose facilities and community centers in Tobago, inclusive of Bethesda and Lowlands, Castara, and Lansforming. 3rd, the provision of computer literacy training at various communities throughout Tobago in collaboration with the Tobago Institute of Literacy. And lastly, the provision of capacity enhancement training programs in a wide range of areas under the Vocational Skills Training Program, where over 1,000 persons graduated from 53 training programs in 2018. Madam Presiding Officer, over the next fiscal year, among the planned programs and initiatives to upgrade community infrastructure and empower communities in Tobago are the continuation of upgrade works to several community and multipurpose centers throughout Tobago, inclusive of Pembroke, Delaford, Lake Atoll, Charlotteville, Glamorgan, Betsy's Hope, and Speyside. The outfitting and commissioning of Adventure and Charlotteville Microenterprises Center, the continuation of the vocational skills and the integrated community literacy improvement program, the expansion and enhancement of the Cool Kids Camp geared towards exposing children to art and craft, as well as civics, agriculture, and environmental awareness, and the implementation of a safe community model project to promote safety and security at the community level. Madam Presiding Officer, the foregoing are the primary areas which the Assembly's fiscal package for 2020 will address. Though audacious, we believe our program of activities are achievable and will result in substantial improvements to the quality of life and living standards of all Tobago's residents. Madam Presiding Officer, I now present the expenditure estimates for fiscal 2020, beginning with recurrent expenditure. Madam Presiding Officer, the recurrent estimates for fiscal 2020 totals $3.26 billion. This can be disaggregated as follows. Personnel expenditure, $917.2 million. Goods and services, $1.08 billion. Minor equipment purchases, $96.3 million. And transfers and subsidies, $1.17 billion. Madam Presiding Officer, this represents an increase of just under $24.7 million from last year's request. The recurrent estimates for divisions for fiscal 2020 are as follows. Assembly Legislature, $28 million. Office of the Chief Secretary, $207.2 million. Finance and the Economy, $264.7 million. Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries, $294.2 million. Tourism, Culture and Transportation, $392.6 million. Education, Innovation and Energy, $512 million. Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor, $124.6 million. Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, $524.7 million. Health, Wellness and Family Development, $778.3 million. Settlements, Urban Renewal and Public Utilities, $38.2 million. And Sport and Youth Affairs, $98.7 million. Madam Presiding Officer, some of the highlights in the recurrent expenditure for fiscal 2020 are the Tobago Tourism Agency, $140 million. Rolling 3-year tourism plan, $88 million. The Tobago Infrastructure Investment Strategy, $9 million. Assistance to small properties in the tourism industry, $8.6 million. Establishment of a public service academy, $5 million. Establishment of an intelligent island, $5 million. The Agricultural Incentive Program, $4 million. Youth Development Program, $3 million. The Tobago Apiculture Society, $2 million. The Tobago Agricultural Society, $1.5 million. And subsidy for fisherfolk, $1.5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn my attention to the development program estimates. The estimates for the development program for fiscal 2020 amount to $1.45 billion, an increase of $71.1 million from fiscal 2019's request to the central government. The development program estimates are disaggregated as follows. Pre-investment, $0.8 million. Economic infrastructure, $743.7 million. Social infrastructure, $427.2 million. And multi-sectoral and other services, $280.1 million. To support our diversification efforts, We will provide funding for Eid Cut, $40.7 million. The Scarborough Esplanade Phase 2, $15 million. The Business Incubator Program, $7.9 million. The Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited, $4 million. And Enterprise Development and the Enterprise Development Grant Program, $3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, we will continue to provide for the expansion of the tourism sector, and as such, the development program estimates cater for the establishment of facilities on Little Tobago, $10 million, the Lower Wildlife Nature Park, $5.6 million, Kings Bay Beach Facility, $2.8 million, and Phase 3 of the 4th King George Heritage Park project, $2.5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, increasing production of the agricultural sector remains a critical priority. As such, the development program estimates cater for the Agricultural Access Roads Program, $50 million, the improvement of beaches and landing facilities, $10 million, the Goldsboro Estate Irrigation Project, $8.5 million, and the revitalization of Hope Farm, $2.5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly continues to invest in education with provisions for the improvement to primary schools, $6.2 million, program for the computerization of primary schools, $2.1 million, and the upgrade of the Charlottesville Library, $1.1 million. Expanding the housing stock remains a priority for the Assembly. Accordingly, our development program estimates provide for development of Adventure Phase 2, $29.5 million, land development at Chauvin, $28 million, land development at Adelphi Estate, $16.7 million, and the new Rise and Housing Project development, $9.6 million. As we continue to enhance our physical infrastructure, our development program estimates provide for the major improvement works on secondary roads, $55 million, a road resurfacing program, $50 million, improvement to Milford Road bridges, $30 million, rehabilitation of the Claude Noel Highway, $30 million, construction of the Milford Road bypass to Smithfield, $30 million, construction of sea defense walls, $15 million, the Milford Road Coastal Protection Program, $8 million, the Roxborough Bloody Bay Retaining Wall, $6.5 million, and improvement to the North Side Road, $5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to include as well in the estimates for fiscal 2020 provisions for URP and CPEP totaling $73.3 million and $39.2 million respectively. Madam Presiding Officer, over the last 12 months, both URP and CPEP were restructured to improve productivity and operational efficiency. Both programs undertook several initiatives, including construction projects, environmental preservation, agricultural production, and the manufacture of furniture and concrete products. These activities can be expected to continue within the next fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now turn my focus to the financing of the 2020 expenditure estimate. Madam Presiding Officer, for fiscal 2020, the estimates of both tax and non-tax revenue are as follows. Taxes on income and profits, $146 million. Taxes on property, $1.3 million. Taxes on goods and services, $56 million. Taxes on international trade, $3.2 million, other taxes, $5.2 million, bringing our total tax revenue to $211.7 million. Property income taxes, $0.2 million, other non-tax revenue, $1 million, resulting in a total projected non-tax revenue for fiscal 2020 of $1.2 million, and bringing our overall total revenue projections for fiscal 2020 to $212.9 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly is working towards improving its revenue generation capacity. A primary initiative in this regard has been the restructuring of the Studley Park Quarry and the formation of the Studley Park Enterprises Limited. The reorganization has resulted in significant increases in efficiency and productivity at the quarry, as well as greater sales and revenues from the related output. The commissioning of the Barbados Bay Jetty in February of this year has increased the sale of quarry products to Trinidad with the potential for regional export. For 2019, SPEL is expected to realize a profit in keeping with conservative projections. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly continues to work with the central government on the establishment of the Revenue Authority. The Assembly submitted written comments to the draft bill, which is receiving the attention of a Joint Select Committee of Parliament. The establishment of the Revenue Authority is expected to significantly enhance tax and non-tax revenues collected in Tobago. A follow-up meeting is scheduled with the Minister in the Ministry of Finance and the Economy to discuss Tobago-specific issues in relation to the Revenue Authority. To address the perennial shortfall in funding for capital expenditure, Madam Presiding Officer, the Executive Council has approved the utilization of alternative financing mechanisms such as the issuance of a bond and the implementation of the public-private partnership modality to accelerate the island's development momentum. The funding raised by the bond will finance projects in key priority areas such as our Intelligent Island Project, our Affordable Housing Program, coastal restoration, sport, and health facilities. Madam Presiding Officer, we are excited about the prospects of our first bond issue, and we continue to collaborate with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that the necessary institutional framework is established to underpin the Assembly's debt management strategy. We continued our collaboration with many of our multilateral partners in the diplomatic community in a concerted effort to leverage their technical expertise towards improved operational efficiency and to access additional resources. These relationships have not only allowed us to participate in initiatives such as the IFMIS and the PFM transformation, but has also lent support to the development of the infrastructure investment strategy previously mentioned. The Caribbean Development Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank continue to collaborate with us on the advancement of our PPP program, and more recently, exchange missions with the Development Bank of Jamaica have led to increased institutional strengthening in this area. Over the next fiscal year, the Investment and Public-Private Partnership Unit will be working closely with the Development Bank of Jamaica's team and our multilateral partners to institute regional best practices, further develop the procurement process, and advance investment interests in our PPP candidate projects. Madam Presiding Officer, before I conclude this morning, I wish to discuss some ongoing collaborations between the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government in accordance with the 6th Schedule of Act 40 of 1996. Madam Presiding Officer, the first issue I wish to treat with is transportation. Madam Presiding Officer, Caribbean Airlines Limited has entered into a wet lease agreement with the Danish Airport Transport Company Limited to facilitate increased travel between the islands from April through to September 2019. This arrangement is expected to add additional seats during this peak period of travel, and it is also anticipated that CAL would provide 216,152 seats for the upcoming July-August holiday period. With respect to the sea bridge, the arrival of the Jean de la Vallee is a welcomed addition to our current fleet servicing the sea bridge, providing luxurious accommodation and additional capacity for 800 passengers and 230 cars. We also anticipate by mid-2020 the arrival of 2 brand new fast ferries, which are now under construction by Austal Ships and Incat Limited. Madam Presiding Officer, the second issue I wish to provide an update on is that of internal self-government. The Constitution Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill 2018 was laid by the Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, in the House of Representatives. The bill seeks to grant, among other things, equality of status between the islands of Trinidad and Tobago. Shortly after the bill was laid, a joint select committee was established to conduct a clause-by-clause examination, and to date, the committee has submitted 2 interim reports, with another report to be submitted in September 2019. While the committee continues to work diligently to critically assess the constitutional, legislative, and fiscal framework within which the Tobago Island government is expected to operate, this administration is simultaneously working to strengthen and develop its human and institutional capacities to facilitate a seamless transition into Tobago's new governance structure. I urge all Tobagonians, Madam Presiding Officer, to remain hopeful that the vision of our forefathers will soon be realized. Madam Presiding Officer, His Excellency President Sir Ellis Clark, a former head of state at an inaugural ceremony of the Tobago House of Assembly, was very pellucid in his remarks that the islands of Trinidad and Tobago must walk side by side, not one behind the other. For this bill to succeed, it requires a 3/5 majority. Therefore, there needs to be bipartisan support for Tobago and Tobagonians to achieve our goal for self-determination. We therefore urge the members opposite to let good sense prevail and ask that they appeal to their UNC friends in the opposition to support the bill in its entirety when it is brought up for debate. Madam Presiding Officer, besides these 2 issues, the Assembly continues to collaborate with various ministries on a range of projects geared towards Tobago's development. The first is the Ministry of National Security. The Chauvin Police Station was operationalized earlier this year, and work continues apace to the completion of the Roxborough Police Station, which is currently 76% complete. Construction has commenced on the Roxborough Fire Station at a cost of approximately $45 million, and a site for a new fire station in Blackrock has been identified. These projects are expected to be completed by July and September 2020, respectively. Further, conceptual designs are currently being prepared for the construction of a new prison in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, there has also been ongoing collaborations with the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs with regard to the refurbishment of the Dwight York Stadium and a number of other related initiatives. I am pleased to report that the stadium is at a 90% completion and is expected to be handed over by September of this year. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly also continues to collaborate with WASA through the Ministry of Public Utilities on a number of projects. These include the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam and the construction of the Southwest Wastewater Treatment Plant. Preparatory works are underway for the dam, while the plant is 90% complete. The Assembly also continues to work alongside the central government on the construction of the new terminal for the A.N.R. Robinson International Airport at Crown Point, and additionally, the construction of a marina in Southwest Tobago. Both these projects will greatly impact the lives of all Tobagonians and the long-term viability of the island's tourism sector. Madam Presiding Officer, as I seek to conclude today's budget presentation, I wish to reaffirm the commitment of this administration to the development of Tobago and to the improvement in the quality of life of all of our citizens. We have an audacious yet attainable program of work to take this island's development forward. Taking our development to the next level requires leadership, vision, tenacity, and commitment. We possess these qualities. What we require now is for everyone to work together to advance our island's development agenda and work selflessly towards achieving this goal. We cannot allow narrow partisan interests and personal aggrandizement to compromise our island's socioeconomic development. We must at all times envisage the bigger picture. Tobagonians are known to be hardworking, productive, diligent, and patriotic. These are the attributes that our island requires at this time to move forward. Notwithstanding some of these challenges that we face, Madam Presiding Officer, we in Tobago have a lot to be thankful for. A cursory glance at regional events is instructive. The Venezuelan political and economic crisis and the fiscal adjustment measures underway in Barbados serve as sobering reminders. We must have a focused, positive outlook as we take stock of our abundant blessings. At this time, more than ever, we need to draw on our inner strength and tenacity as a people. If we do, I have no doubt that collectively we will enjoy the growth and prosperity that we seek. This is not the time for grandstanding, showmanship, and divisiveness, nor is it a time to seek to score cheap political points at the expense of Tobago's development. Madam Presiding Officer, fortunately for us, we have a central government that is committed to the development of Tobago, respects our aspirations, and the institution that is the Tobago House of Assembly.
I know that it has been a long time for us to complete the debate, and I'm hoping that the minority leader would allow the Secretary of Finance to finish his statement without further interruptions. I ignored the first one. This is your warning. Please, you will have your say on Thursday.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Fortunately for us, we have a central government that is committed to the development of Tobago, respects our aspirations, and the institution that is the Tobago House of Assembly. We continue to collaborate with the central government on a number of developmental projects that will bring significant social and economic benefits to our island. Notwithstanding our disappointment occasioned by the loss of the Sandals opportunity, we remain committed to working with the central government to stimulate foreign direct investment in Tobago. Our island is open for business, and this is the message we must all send loud and clear. Madam Presiding Officer, this has been another auspicious occasion. On behalf of the Chief Secretary, all secretaries, and assistant secretaries of the Tobago House of Assembly, I thank our audience both within and without the chamber, and the people listening for your time and attention. I wish to inform this honorable House, as well as our listening and viewing public, that all the budget documents will be available online on the Assembly's website for ongoing review and comments. May God continue to bless us all, and may God continue to bless the people of Tobago and the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move.
I will go ahead with the proposed motion, and then I will have the Leader of Assembly Business speak. Be it further resolved that the House, the question proposed, be it further resolved that the House approve the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure respecting all functions of the Tobago House of Assembly for the financial year October 1, 2019 to September 30th, 2020, copies of which were laid on the table at an earlier stage in the proceedings. Leader of Assembly Business.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that this House be adjourned to Thursday, the 27th of June, 2019 at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Members, the question put is that this House now stand adjourned to Thursday, the 27th of June 2019, beginning at 10 a.m. All in favor? Aye. Any against? The House now stand adjourned until Thursday, the 27th of June 2019, beginning at 10 a.m.